This is a split call. The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Correct. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Can I say that of all the excuses that I've heard this evening, the ones that I've just heard from the member who resumed his seat were the best. They were the most innovative, least related to the research unit notes of the National Party, and I want to commend the member for that. We've heard some extraordinary stories about why this bill is here. Jonathan Young stood up and said with an absolutely dead straight face, "We now know more about the industry." This bill is amending a bill that hasn't even come into force yet, Mr Young. We have not learnt a huge amount more about the industry in the last 3 weeks. Or, well, perhaps the member may have, but the rest of the world hasn't, certainly not enough to bring in an amendment to the legislation. Another one of the National Party said that this bill is to correct minor omissions in the transitional provisions, that it was a prudent, responsible and the right thing to do. This is just amazing. That was clearly in the research unit notes, and somebody else said that it was a tidy-up. Well, it certainly is a tidy-up, and the reason that it's a tidy-up is because Minister Simon Bridges made a mess of the last attempt at a bill, and it's quite clear that even though Jonathan Young has learnt a huge amount about the oil industry over the last 3 weeks, the Minister hasn't. If he had learnt anything about parliamentary process, he would know that ramming a bill through all stages with no scrutiny by a select committee, with no submissions from the public, is begging for problems. And I predict that we will have the Crown Minerals Amendment Act 2013, Amendment Act later on in 2013, Amendment Bill coming before the House before the end of the year, because the Minister just can't help it. He's in such a desperate hurry to get his name on the statute records that he just makes a muck-up of it. He's going to be known as the Minister who has made more mistakes in his tenure as a Minister than any other in history. We shouldn't have to do this. We should send it to a select committee where people like Jonathan Young, who's actually a competent and good chair, he's a competent chair, where Jonathan Young could make sure that submitters came in and told us about the issues of concern, could alert us to potential fishhooks, could explain to us that there could be unintended consequences from legislation, and the committee could say, well, we're prepared to take the risk, or no, we want to avoid that and we'll change it. But no, Minister Simon Bridges knows it all, barrel the whole lot through under urgency without any scrutiny. That's just a recipe for disaster. What this actually is a developer's charter. It's clear that the changes which separate the consideration of the standards from the granting of the application is going to be a problem. So with health and safety standards, with environmental standards and with the financial standards that the government themselves have set, it doesn't matter if the application says no, we don't meet any of those standards, they can still be granted a licence to go ahead. That is a major mistake. Those standards are there for a reason. The government put them in place, and I think they should make sure that they are adhered to. Mr Speaker, the final point I want to make is in relation to something which clearly isn't a tidy-up or correcting some omission or sudden changes because we've learnt so much more about the industry, and that's the extension of the no protest zone to cover the continental shelf. What arrogance of the government. Whose space is that, the continental shelf? Is that ours to suddenly say that this new no protest regime will be in place in there as well? Well, that's what this legislation does. I know that tomorrow the country will wake to news of this, that this provision, which was justifiably lambasted when it first came before the Parliament just a little while ago, is now being extended. It's being extended by a significant amount. I think it's 1.7 million square kilometres. That's a huge area of continental shelf outside the EEZ where these no protest new regimes will come into place. Mr Speaker, it's ruining New Zealand's international reputation. It's ruining our own democratic rights and protections, and I think this bill should be opposed.
Call Eugenia Sage.
you, Mr Speaker. I'm not pleased to take a call on the Crown Minerals Amendment Bill.